not, but you're recognized for your 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr.
Be a
Chair.
great witness, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the ranking member and to the witnesses. No, they're actually just outside of my district, but I am honored to be representing the University of Northern Colorado, where we have student athletes who, of course, will be directly impacted by the NIL reforms that we're discussing here today. And I've had the chance to hear from this institution about some of the needs for federal regulation to set those basic rules of the road for all schools and ensure that we're setting up our student athletes for success. They're a Big Sky Conference member with a very, I think they have the highest graduation rate, actually, and a very good sports program. And so look forward to working with them to be able to just explore how we can get this critical work done. And so my first question with that backstory is to Ms. Cole. Again, University of Northern Colorado, they have that very, very crucial role of setting up their student athletes for success, not just in college, but for the rest of their lives. But as we've heard, we have situations where student athletes can get in trouble with owing back taxes or being taken advantage of or exploited. And so just want to hear a little bit about your experience in how, as a student athlete, you can navigate the NIL landscape responsibly, and how institutions and conferences can play a role in making sure that students get the appropriate guidance to navigate that situation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your question, Congressman Evans. I actually spoke on 2 different panels at the NIL Summit, which started obviously right after the laws changed, for Invesco and then Robinhood, to really bring up the importance of awareness around these topics and education for student athletes, especially in such a new and ill-defined space. And I think it's extremely important that we put in programs to help make sure that these student athletes are educated in a way that they can go into these decisions informed to really set themselves up in the best position to thrive both during and after their collegiate careers.
Thank you. And kind of continuing on that same vein of questioning, Mr. Egbo, you served some time on the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. Can you just talk a little bit about how that exposed you to some of the decision-making processes for your athletic department?
Yes, I was on SAC for my institution, president, and then representative of my conference, and then now sit on National SAC, which I'm on Visual Council with Josh. Integrated in every level of governance and decision making. At the national level, 32 reps, 1 from each Division I conference. We sit on every voting standing committee on council and board of directors and board of governors. So just being exposed to that and also trying to create more avenues, like Josh mentioned earlier, to give student athletes more decision making influence and voice is very important. But we are integrated in it, and there's a system in place right now to have that continue to be built up.
Thank you. And then to Mr. Whitman, we've heard today about some of the good work that institutions are doing to make sure that they're taking care of their student athletes, but we also understand that there is a need for, again, just basic rules of the road legislation. For example, one thing that I specifically heard from my athletic director at the University of Northern Colorado, and it seems to be a concern that y'all are facing as well, is last week CBS Sports obtained a draft bill from the Capitol in Springfield to exempt NIL payments from state income tax, which is modeled after some policies in other states. And so the question is, do you think that patchwork where some states are able to exempt those payments from income tax gives a competitive advantage? And how do you think that affects the recruiting landscape without general rules of the road?
Thank you for the question, and yes, I absolutely do think it's a competitive advantage, and that's the kind of political maneuvering that we need to try and eliminate through the use of federal legislation. Right now we have this environment that makes it very difficult to compete on a level playing field, which is the point of college sports, is when Coach Beamer goes out on a Saturday afternoon to know that he has the same opportunity for his team to be successful as those teams that he's competing against. And right now, some of these state laws are creating inequity across our system that really can only be addressed through federal legislation.
And so with my last 20 seconds, just very briefly, how do you see such a piece of legislation structured to give the institutions the flexibility they need to be able to do the good work that many of them are doing, but also to provide that guidance?
Ultimately, I think it's on two fronts. One is preemption, making sure that this new piece of legislation preempts state efforts to address some of the issues that are active in college athletics. And then secondly, as I discussed with Ms. Lee earlier, I think it's important that we create some limited antitrust safe harbor so that we have flexibility to manage our own house. And we've heard from you and your colleagues that people are interested in seeing college athletics step up and manage its own affairs.
Thank you.
We'd like to do that, but we need additional resources on the legal side to manage.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back.